Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Town Council for Thursday, March 24th to order. If you please rise, and Nick, if you would come and help us with the Pledge of Allegiance?
Do I need the mic?
Yeah, just because nobody on the TV can hear you otherwise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, announcements. I haven't got many. Upcoming town council meetings, Thursday, the 14th of April and the 28th of April are both regular meetings to be held here in this room. And an important date to remember is Tuesday, April 12th of 2022 from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is our ballot voting/voting day at your designated polling place. If you don't remember or know where your designated polling place is, you can look it up on the state's Secretary of State website. You can go to the Merrimack Town Clerk Tax Collector's website and find a link to that. And that information, you just plug in your street address and it'll tell you which of the three locations you should be voting at. You are not allowed to vote at another location unless you're got special permission because you're a worker or something like that. So if you show up at the wrong location, they will send you to the correct one because that's where your name is on the list. Paul, do you have any other comments?
Yeah, that was a great segue for me. Absentee ballots for the second session of the Town and School District meeting, voting day, April 12th, are available at the Town Clerk Tax Collector's office. Any voter who will be unable to appear at any time during polling hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. due to employment, being incarcerated in a penal institution for a misdemeanor or awaiting trial, or will otherwise be absent from town election, or who is unable to go to the polls due to a disability or religious observance may vote by absentee ballot. Concerns for seasonal flu and COVID qualify as a disability. Voters must send a signed written request specifying the reason an absentee ballot is needed to the town clerk's office, or download and complete the absentee ballot request form on the Town of Merrimack's website, www.merrimacknh.gov. The form is found on the homepage of the town's website or in the town clerk section under elections and votings. Written requests or completed forms can be dropped off at the town clerk's office, fax to 603-423-8539, emailed to townclerk, all one word, at merrimacknh.gov, or mailed to town clerk, attention, absentee ballots, 6 Babuzik Lake Road, Merrimack, New Hampshire, 03054. Absentee ballots can only be given or mailed directly to the person making the request. The filing deadline for all property tax exemptions and property tax credits is April 15th. If you believe you're due an exemption, please see the assessing department's town webpage from the town's website. The late hours at the transfer station will begin on March 31st and continue through September 8th. During that period, operating hours at the transfer station will be 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Tuesdays. Well, sorry, let me read that. During the period, operating hours at the transfer station will be 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. Thursdays' hours would be from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. The Parks and Rec Department invites you to join us on Saturday, April 9th at Wasserman Park for the 30th annual Easter egg hunt. Egg hunts are held between the hours of 10 a.m. and 11:30 p.m. To view the time slots for your child's age group, visit the Parks and Rec Department's website at www.merrimackparks.nrec.org. The library is hosting and will host AARP tax aid volunteers on Mondays from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. from now through April 11th. This is an assistance by appointment only, with multiple slots available at 9 a.m., 10 a.m., and 11 a.m. Please call the library to make an appointment for more information. And finally, The Abbey Griffin Hospital Fund applications are available for Merrimack residents until April 20th this year. To get more information and an application, call the Welfare Department at Town Hall at 603-423-8535 or email welfare@merrimacknh.gov. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments? The election's only like 2.5 weeks away, so if anybody is planning to mail in and ask for an absentee ballot, they better opt to it.
Get on it. And we just received our absentee ballots today. So early next week, we will be counting them, making sure they are proper and checking our ballot machines. And once the town clerk goes through the procedure, she'll be mailing them out for people.
Okay. And the school district doing a similar, must be,
Yes, they control all ballots over there.
right. Okay. Comments from the press and public. Anybody that would wish to address the town council at this time should come up to one of our mics. Seeing none. Recognitions, resignations, and retirements, we have none this evening. Appointments, we've made a slight change in the way we're doing these appointments, because we always end up changing it anyway. We do have an Eagle Scout project tonight, submitted by Life Scout Nick Bourne, and so we'd move that up into the appointment section so that we don't have to do an official change of schedule. So Nick, if you want to come up and let us know what you got going, that'd be great. There you go.
Thank you for having me at the meeting, first of all. Okay. My Eagle Scout project is a Watson Park Gaga ball pit. So first, a little about me. I'm a Life Scout in Troop 15 out of St. John Newman in Merrimack. I've been in Scouts for over 10 years. All my brothers were Scouts. 2 of them are Eagle Scouts. I'm 17, so I'm getting to the end of my scouting career. I only have like 6 months left, so gotta get this done.
Gotta get it done.
So yeah, I want to build a Gaga ball pit. I've seen 2 people I know build them at Washington Park, and I've heard how like everyone has loved them. So when I reached out to Matt about a Eagle Scout project, he gave me a list, and I saw this, and I was like, that might be something good to do, because I usually go to Watson Park for ice skating, and that's one of the only things you can really do there. So I think the more you can add, the more people might visit the park. So I bet some of you are wondering, what is Gaga ball?
Yeah, you could go for it again. That would be great.
Yeah, I got a video for it.
Oh, wow.
Load. Slowly loading.
Only if it runs, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's got sound, but it's not working. All right, well, I can explain it. So Gaga ball is basically like dodgeball, but you can only get out if you're hit in the knees down. So basically, you use like your hand, open or close, to hit the ball. Usually it's a softer ball, because if it's something hard, you can seriously hurt yourself. And you play until you're the last person standing, and then everyone gets back in. I've played with groups of up to 50, but it all depends on the size of the Gaga ball pit, because they usually come in hexagons or octagons. So if it's a small space, then it's kind of hard. So yeah, this is a clip from the company I'm using for the brackets, which is out. It's a very small company. It's out in like Illinois, but their brackets are pretty strong. I think both Gaga ball pits used them at Washington Park for the brackets, and they've held up pretty well. So that's about all of the clips of them playing it. After this, it's more about building. So I'll move on. So Watson Park. This is just an overview of the park, so we know which one we're talking about. Okay. So yeah, the current Gaga Ball pit at Washington Park, which is probably the most similar of the two to mine, because I'm using the same height and dimensions as this one. So the boards are 2x10s for the walls, and there's a 2x4 in the middle to basically stabilize it, because if you don't, the boards will bend over time, and you'll have to replace them eventually. The plastic wall covers do not come with the kit, so that is an additional cost, but I can get that from the company. We do plan on making a door like the one in the picture, so it's easier to get in for shorter people, because I know when I first played Gaga, I could not get over the wall by myself.
Come on, you just flip yourself over, right?
This is the first site we looked at, which is closer to the barbecue area and picnic tables at Watson Park. So yeah, the pros were that it's near the grilling area, but one of the problems was that it's close to the river, which I know you guys want people staying out of. So we looked at a second site that Matt suggested, which was back by the gazebo and ice rink. So the pros for this one is it's near beach volleyball, so you might have people who kind of go between the two and the ice rink. But I wouldn't expect them to play Gaga in the winter. The only con is it's kind of far from the road, but it's in a clear spot. You can still see it. And these are the two spots side by side, so you can see the comparison distance between them. It's an older picture, so it doesn't have the gazebo, but I was able to map out where it would be. This is my budget. So this is supposed to cost a little under $2,000. My donations, the budget for that is the $600 is the food from my fundraiser, which I plan to do a meatball sub fundraiser at St. John Newman. And that should cost around $500 for the food for that, and then another $100 for the food for my build days. The Gaga Ball kit is $520. Depending on the one you get, they can be like more expensive or cheaper. But the one for the size that I'm doing is $520. The wood, I used Home Depot to estimate that cost. I expect it to be cheaper because I want to get a cheaper cost or some of it donated by like Reed's Ferry. So yeah, that added up to $652. Food and snacks, that's the food and snacks for the build day for the other scouts that are helping, because if you don't feed them, they will be cranky. Yeah, hardware, all I have to buy for hardware are screws for the 2x4s, because the rest of the screws and nuts and bolts come in the Gaga Ball kit. And the plastic wall covers that you can buy on the website are $22. This is my timeline. The District Eagle Board is April 12th, so I plan to have a Troop Eagle Board after this meeting and between that one, so I can get all the boards done, and then I can start fundraising. I plan to buy the supplies and start building sometime in June, because since it's a small company in like a garage in Illinois, it takes some time to ship the brackets. I believe one of the ones from Washington Park took a few, like 2 or 3 weeks just to get it out here. So, and then I plan to finish the build at the latest on June 26th. So that gives me a few weeks, depending on how fast things arrive. I can build before that. And that is it.
So does a Gaga Ball pit have a bottom, or is it just grass, or?
So it depends on what you prefer. You can play it on grass. It works. The only problem is you might have to get a lawnmower in there.
I was going to ask that question.
So you can
how
always
do you maintain it?
I have budgeted separately for some dirt, like not much to be brought in. Just if you want dirt on the bottom, doesn't matter. Either one works. And it doesn't have to be. You don't have to like flatten any ground, as long as you just have a flat area. It doesn't have to be like, there's no supports to go into the ground, so you don't have to do any building for that.
Which is good in Watson Park, because we can't go in the ground more than 1.5 feet or something like that. Does anybody have any questions other than me? Lon?
I have no questions, but I will say that the presentation in front of the Parks and Rec Commission was very, very well received, very enthusiastic, and comes to you with my confidence in that, and you did as well tonight as you did with us earlier. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody? Nancy?
Thank you. What a great job you did with that presentation. Can you just tell me, how big is this? What's the size of the Gaga ball pit?
So the it's about 25 feet across, and the walls are 30 inches tall, and the 2x10s and 2x4s. So yeah, it's about 25 feet depending on each corner of the hexagon or octagon.
Great, thank you. What a great idea.
Okay. Finley?
Did we want to talk about location since there were two offered?
We're going to need to, yeah. I just didn't know whether anybody had any other questions about the idea or not.
I don't have any questions. One, I think it's a great idea. Two, in terms of a site, though, my first question was preparing the ground, which you already asked.
Oh,
Because I did not know whether you had to do something to prepare the surface of the
Mhm.
inside. And you already answered that. The second is, I think it's better down by where the gazebo is. Because
Yeah,
you'll
I
have
tend
people
to
watching you.
Yep.
But that's my preference. But again, it's up to the council.
well, yeah, I kind of like that too, getting it a little further away from the barbecue pits and stuff, just because that's where families will gather and stuff, and you might have enough crowd around a Gaga ball pit. Of course, those might be the people that want to use it too, so, but exercise back and forth across Watson Park's not a bad thing either.
If you're playing Gaga, the walk to the back of Watson Park isn't a big deal.
That's right. At least we think. Now, this is a reasonably safe, all ages kind of thing, right? You're just,
Yeah.
you have to hit below the knee.
Yep. Depending on the rules, some people
So if
like
the
it a
ball
bit more
launches and
aggressive.
hits you in the shoulder or something, you're not
If
out?
if it's basically like shoulder or above, if you hit someone there, then the person that hit
And
it
the
is
person
out.
that hit you
Yep.
is out, okay.
I've played it with people that are 6. I've played it with people that are 40. Depends on if they want to play or not.
Okay. Nancy?
Thank you. Just thought of another question. Is there a certain kind of ball that has to be used? I'm just thinking if certain balls might be a little bit more potentially harmful depending upon the size of the people in there.
Depends upon the group that you're playing
Right,
with.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, is there is there a certain ball that's designated, or can you use any ball?
You can really use any ball. As like I wouldn't
Just
use like a basketball. That's probably too
That's
heavy,
what I'm just
but-
thinking of, a weighted ball or something.
But
could
yeah,
be.
like the most common one is usually a volleyball.
But everybody brings their own ball, right? We
Usually.
don't have a ball that's gonna be hanging around for people
No,
to use.
it'll be
so-
deflated if you do that.
That's,
Won't be there.
that would be a problem.
It'll be gone.
Maintenance is always a question, and I don't know what the condition of the current ones is, as far as durability and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Matt?
we
Looks
checked
like
in on them. They seemed to like. I was at the build day for the one that I showed down by the lake, and that's seems to be in the same condition it was the day we built it. No
was-
damage.
I'm assuming the lumber is pressure treated?
Matt, you wanted to
That's a
give us
yes.
a,
Sure.
it's probably on, it should be good. They turn it on.
Okay. So the two at Wasserman Park, we really haven't had to do any maintenance on them. I think the first one went in 4 years ago.
Seems like it.
And yeah, eventually, the plywood will eventually have to be replaced, but I don't see that as a big issue. I've talked to Public Works a little bit about it. I mean, the main thing is they got to mow around it and, probably do some weed whacking around on the outside, but we would certainly want kind of the dirt surface on the inside to not have to mow inside.
Is that what's done at Wasserman Park then for the two that,
Yep.
was it a sand that they put in?
Yeah.
But even if we have to mow inside, it's not a big deal. The guys are down there. They have the weed whackers anyways. Kyle said they'd have to go through and weed whack it instead of doing it, so it's not a big deal either way. We had the discussion with Kyle and Matt today,
Oh.
and Kyle's fine with maintaining it.
Perfect.
Either way, whatever he has to do.
Okay, so let me go back to the location question. Does anybody have any other thoughts on where it ought to be or preferences?
I see pros and cons to both. I'm kind of indifferent, so whatever the will of the council is.
Barbara?
I'm glad you're putting a Gaga pit there. Thank you. We
Putting
needed
what? I didn't hear that. I'm
I said
sorry.
I'm glad he's putting a Gaga pit
Oh.
there because it needed something else.
Something
other than the
else.
volleyball in the
Yeah.
summer. And I think no matter, it shouldn't be near the volleyball because those balls are like all over the place down there. So, you know, I think if you want to move it over near the gazebo or halfway in between, that would be fine.
So he's talking, I think, about putting it back behind the gazebo, towards that corner back there a little bit.
I think it's important for it to be seen so people know it's there and they can use it. If you hide it too far behind the gazebo, no one will know it's there.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I like the back location. I do prefer that.
Just not too far behind the gazebo or something. Does that
Yeah,
seem reasonable?
the back location, like, it was far enough out, away
To
from
be
the
seen.
gazebo that it was visible from the parking lot and the road.
Okay. Is that okay with you, Matt? Yep. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? We need a motion to accept this project?
So I move to,
Or,
That's okay?
oh, I'm
Good.
sorry,
No,
did
go.
I step
Go
on
for
you?
it. Nope.
Sorry. Move to approve the Life Scout project by Nick Bourne, proposing to build a Gaga ball pit at Watson Park.
Second.
Motion by Andy and seconded by Nancy to accept or to approve the project. If there's no other comments, did a great job. We'll
Thank
call
you.
for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. So congratulations, have fun. We look forward to it. If you need us to sign anything, please let us know.
Okay.
Either I or Paul McCallie can do that whenever you get your paperwork together.
Yep.
All right?
Okay.
And you'll continue to work with Matt and coordinate that way for the location.
Yep.
Sound good?
Thank you.
All right, thank
Thanks,
you.
Nick.
Very welcome.
Good job, Nick.
Yeah.
Another born eagle, huh, coming up?
Yep.
Good deal.
There you go.
Hi. Next on our agenda is an annual review with the Highway Safety Committee. Submitted by Highway Safety Committee Chair, Police Chief Brian Levesque, for Town of Merrimack Charter Section 6-6, at least annually, there should be an annual review with the Highway Safety Committee. This agenda item is to highlight the committee's significant actions, current projects, anticipated actions, and to raise any concerns the council should know or could act on.
Good evening, Mr.
Chief,
Chairman,
welcome.
members of Town Council. The purpose of the Highway Safety Committee is to have a highway safety program designed to reduce traffic accidents, deaths, injuries, and property damage therein resulting from accidents. I would have to report that the Highway Safety Committee did not meet at all last year. We were able to vet any issues to the proper channels. A lot of times it's more education with the public that we can do one-on-one. The one thing that we were able to do quite a bit of is we always get a lot of speed complaints. So we've been using a lot of our data collection devices and setting them up in those areas and then explaining to the complainant about the results. And typically if we find, of course, everyone thinks a lot of speeding's happening, but it's always sometimes, optical illusion around corners. It looks like cars are going faster. But typically, every time we set up the speed data collection device, it's always been around the 85th percentile, which is the correct speed for the roadway, according to the manual on uniform traffic control. So we share that with the results. If there are some outliers where we see that might be a busy time, then we set up a directed patrol with our patrol units when they're free to possibly run radar.
Okay,
And that's all I have.
so no meetings this past year.
Correct.
My
That's,
favorite-
that's why
my-
Finley likes
my
that.
favorite committee. No, it's actually very enjoyable meeting everybody for those meetings on the rare occasion that we have them.
And as you know, we addressed major issues before. Just this year, we haven't had any major issues. So,
And
You've
doing-
just cursed yourself.
true.
And doing that data collection, what I recall finding in some instances where it was folks living in the neighborhood who were the higher speeders, and which I thought
Wouldn't
was kind of
surprise me either.
Yeah,
Correct.
Interesting.
so it's your
Lon?
neighbors.
Lon?
Yeah, just curious, with the roundabout at Babuzik Lake and Turkey Hill, in your normal channels for information, has that raised any questions or?
No, as
concern?
a matter of fact, it improved traffic conditions greatly. We haven't had a single accident there yet. So, and typically that's twice. I'm gonna doom myself here. As you're aware, that intersection was truly horrible. We've had some significant major accidents there based on the Y shape of it. So, the roundabout, number one, looks great, but it's also safe.
Thank you.
If I might, a benefit that I didn't even realize when we were contemplating doing that was coming down Joppa Road, going to the extension. It was always a bear coming through that because the
That's
sight
right.
distance is awkward.
Much better.
And with it coming out of the rotary, it slows it down enough to where it's much easier to cross that road now.
And it's more visible.
Yeah. So, yeah, because it moved it over a little.
Right.
And it seems like everyone understood it, so that was great. We didn't get wrong way drivers. So,
Okay, any other questions for the chief on the Highway Safety Committee? I mean, in the past, you've talked about things like the exit up north, exit 13, I guess, coming southbound and getting off, and the trouble with that merge there, and obviously nothing has changed.
correct. There's nothing that's going to be done there.
Nothing's
We
gonna be done.
raised the concerns to the state. We haven't heard anything from any residents this year about that again. So there's proper signage. People just need to urge caution and watch out for that car, the exiting the northbound side.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the north and the south
Yeah.
coming in there, merging. I see it most coming south from Manchester to get to these meetings or something like that.
Absolutely, I agree that it can be problematic, but if people pay attention and
It
maintain
is
lower
difficult.
speeds,
Yeah,
it can be more.
okay. And then other events that you've had in the past have been various different stop sign locations and stuff like that.
Correct, and we'll address parking issues like we did up at the Hadley Road area during school hours. That was one of the major ones we did before.
Right.
So if any citizens do have a suggestion for signage, a lot of times it's education and speaking to them, saying a sign probably wouldn't work there. But like I said, we'll be more than willing to have a full hearing on it.
Okay. Do you foresee any particular issues with the widening of the turnpike as far as traffic in Merrimack that might somehow get involved with?
Hopefully it'll improve traffic when there's an accident on the highway. So hopefully we'll be able to divert, they won't be diverting off the highway and clogging up our major thoroughfares.
During the construction?
Oh, during the construction, sorry. I think hopefully, I don't know, we'll see. It is,
Okay.
I haven't seen the plan yet as far
it's
as what
still a
hours
wait
of
and see.
operation they're working. I assume there'll be a lot of night work, but
Well, the first thing they have to do is rebuild those 2 or 3 bridges that go across, right, which is gonna impact everybody trying to get back and forth across the highway.
correct.
But hopefully one at a time. Anyway, good. If there's no other questions or comments, and you don't have anything else to offer, I think we appreciate you coming. If there's anything that we can do to help out the Highway Committee, by all means, please let us know.
I will say that Finley is a great representative on that committee.
Thanks,
I
Chief.
saw the
appreciate
wink.
that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Oh,
I can't do these and pay attention to a meeting.
That brings us to a public hearing on the Abbey Griffith Memorial Fund, which is annually distributed to the Merrimack Fire and Police Departments, submitted by Town Manager Paul McCallie. The Town Council to hold a public hearing to authorize the acceptance and expenditure of funds from the Abbey Griffin Memorial Fund in the amount not to exceed $22,555 for the purchase of rope rescue equipment on the 2 new engines for the fire department and for a law enforcement radar, 4 simunition conversion kits for new Sig Sauer P320X carry pistols, and the purchase of 2 Sig Sauer M400 semi-automatic patrol rifles equipped with sound suppressors and red dot optics for the police department pursuant to RSA 3195B and Charter Article 815. There's also a request for 4 rubber keyboards or something like that in the
Yes.
backup material.
Yes, there are
Someone
4 rubber keyboards that didn't make the front page.
Okay.
Abbey Griffin Fund has generously over the years have donated money, and basically what happens is that Abbey Griffin, when she died, she left money, then she broke it out into a couple of different categories, and one of the categories was for police and fire. And there's an investment company that invests the money, and each year, what we get to spend is how well the investments are doing. This last year, the investments did very well, so we got to spend up to $22,555 of this money from this fund. People have asked, what happens if you don't spend it? If we don't spend it, they go to the other two grants, so to speak, that she set up, and they try to spend it. If they can't spend it, then what happens is that then the fund gets taxed, because it's supposed to be a charitable donation, and all the income is supposed to be spent out year after year. So we try to do our best and come up with the money. If when we go out to bids, if we're a little bit higher, we usually have some other grants or donations that we receive that could help offset it. But sometimes we do get more than the $22,555. But this year, that's what it's looking at for police and fire. I don't know who got the short straw or called tails. Which one's going first? Is it police or fire? So I guess police got the short straw this year, so fire's going first. To explain the ropes, and if the council has any other questions on what they're looking to purchase.
And just before you get started, Chief, these funds are dedicated to police and fire to be used for things that are not in the budget, but that are needed or useful for the departments? Is that?
Yes, and it's equipment-based. It's equipment-based. You can't
do salary funds or something?
Yeah, you can't put it towards salary or renovating a building or things of that sort. It has to be equipment-based.
Equipment they need for their jobs.
For their jobs.
Okay, thank you.
Evening, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on behalf of this grant fund. So what you see before you is to help replace our aging equipment that was on those two engines that were purchased, and also enhance some of the capabilities of the rope rescue equipment that we have. Today, there are plenty of great pieces of equipment that help our firefighters do the job easier and safer, and those are some of the items that have been put on this list. One of them in specific that you'll see is it's called the Cmc Clutch. That mechanism allows the firefighter or the rescuer to belay themselves, or a Stokes basket or some other type of line that needs to be held in place a lot easier than us trying to rig up with a couple of carabiners, which you may know as those half circle or circular type pieces with locking mechanisms. It takes a lot to put one of those together, whereas this clutch assembly, they just clip it on the rope and they're done. So it certainly enhances the ability of our team to work much more efficiently and quickly to get the job done that they need to do. So there are some other pieces of equipment on here that will replace some antiquated, outdated equipment. And then, like I said, there's some others that will enhance what we already have. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, because I'm not sure specifically what you may have for thoughts, ideas, suggestions.
Does anybody have questions? Thought I saw Nancy getting ready, but.
So
Go ahead,
I
Andy.
guess I just have a procedural question. The figures that are in here, are those hard quotes that we went out and received, or is this just a budgetary number? If approved, we'll go out and get the quotes and multiple quotes. How does that?
We go out, if it's approved, if the council approves the equipment to be purchased, we go out and then do a bidding process on some of this stuff. Some of the stuff is sole source. Some of it, we can have state contracts to purchase off of that. But yeah, we will go out and rebid. And I forgot to mention that normally we split the donation in half, 50-50. But last year, fire was a little over 50%. This year, police is a little bit over 50%. So they work it out amongst themselves of, what to purchase. And if you need a little additional money, they'll work it out amongst themselves during the purchasing.
They have an interagency contest.
That's right. The firemen with hoses and the police with, well, we won't go there.
Alternatives.
Alternatives. The taser.
So, $9,000 for rope seems like a lot, but as you pointed out, that clutch is a pretty important piece. Do these things have life expectancies, or you're
Yeah,
replacing
so
old
the
stuff
rope
from the other
that we
engines?
currently have is over 15 years of age. And while we do our best to keep it clean and, put in proper bags and stuff like that, it does get dirty, and we do our best to clean it. But you'd be surprised to learn that, dirt has granules, and those granules have sharp edges when you get down to the microscopic level, which then will start to degrade and erode the rope, now making it not as safe as it could or should be. So we do need to replace those things periodically. And then we do have some carabiners that aren't of the locking type, which is a safety mechanism, so that once you lock it in place, it will not come undone. Whereas we have some carabiners that don't lock and may have the ability to open when we don't want them to open. So that's kind of why we'd like to try to upgrade and enhance and improve our rope capabilities if we can.
So I don't disagree with the need for it. I'm just trying to, curious about how often we use rope and carabiners to do things like that. Or, I mean, is this something that we find we end up pulling out somewhat regularly, or?
To be honest, I don't know how many calls historically the department's gone on, but, even if we use it one time, and with the river that you have here, it certainly would be used in river responses because that river does move pretty quickly. So to make sure that our rescuers are safe, we would use rope rescue equipment, and some of this may or may not be used during that type of a rescue response. And then anything else that may be down a ravine or a ditch or something like that, we may use rope equipment to give our firefighters the ability to get down to the problem and then get back up. Sometimes people don't think about getting back up with a patient, but it can be somewhat
It can be a
a
challenge.
difficult task and a challenge to get it done, yeah, so,
Kind of like trying to get some of the patients downstairs
Right.
is a challenge. So.
yeah. So I'm sure it gets used a couple times a year, but I know they do train on it at least monthly to make sure that they're, properly ready to go and
I guess that was one of the
competent
next
and-
questions, is what kind of a training
Yeah.
program do people have for being able to utilize this stuff?
Yeah,
And-
no, they train on it at least monthly to make sure that their competency skills are up to date, because it's, again, there's a lot that goes to this with ropes and knots. And all of this equipment, if you're not, competent in how it's all gonna work, you may make an error, so they do train on it quite frequently to make sure they're ready to go.
Awesome. Any other comments or questions? Do we need to take a motion on this, or we're gonna take a motion on the overall? Okay. All right, great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief. It's nice to see you again.
Good evening again.
Good evening, Chief. Assistant Chief.
So the items before you, that we're requesting to use Abbey Griffin funds for, is a law enforcement radar from JMR Technologies to collect and analyze data and traffic count. As I told you before during the Highway Safety Committee presentation, we get a lot of requests for this for speeding vehicles, and unfortunately, we don't have the staff to have an officer sit on the side of the road for X amount of hours, because obviously call volume can be high. So we deploy these out, it records it, and then we report back to the citizen that made the complaint. The problem with our current data collection devices is the reporting values. It's very convoluted, it's very hard to draw data out of it. Half the time, it's very confusing, so much that sometimes I have to seek clarification from our community services officer who downloads it. And we have to explain those issues to the citizens, because they might see a giant spike of 115 miles an hour. In reality, it's just a ghost reading, which we get them on our radars as well at times. So we have to explain that. So this is just more of a clean way to have a data report for them so they can visually see it. I did include a copy in your packets. You can tell it's a NETA product. And we often have to put citizens on hold and say, oh, our two devices are out on other roads. Once we're done collecting that data device for, a week or so, we'll put it on your road. This way we'll have another one to put in rotation, and we'll continue using all of them. Hopefully, there won't be so much need that we can really use this one mainly. That way we can provide clean data and clean reports.
And this is a single unit you're talking about?
Correct.
Okay, and it mounts on a pole, or?
Yep,
that
it's
just happens
similar-
to be a picture that
Yep,
shows
it's
it on
a
pole?
black box that just mounts on the pole. It's lockable with a cable, and then what we do is we just attach that, and it's rather discreet. It doesn't record any plates or anything like that. It just simply does data count and record speeds.
Okay. It said something about being able to measure, contemplate the size of the vehicle and things like that.
Correct,
as well.
it'll take that all in effect, yep.
Okay. but it's not gonna flash speed numbers or any of that kind of stuff?
No, unlike our other signs that does have the speed on it, this one will not.
Okay, so it'll be very,
Non-obtrusive.
non-obtrusive,
Yep.
yeah. Lon?
Yeah, along that line, I looked at the picture. Do you have any information or any data about units being stolen or tampered with or whatever when they're out there?
We have not, but we have not had any issues with ours. It's a very similar locking mechanism. Someone would have to do some work to get through a steel cable and then detach all the brackets, and it'd be labor intensive, so hopefully by then someone would employ our see something, say something, give us a call.
Thank you.
Does this have cameras in it so that it can detect somebody doing something? Or
No, it does not.
Did not. So it's just literally sensing moving vehicles,
Correct.
magnetic, well, whatever, radar-wise, I guess.
Radar, yes. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions about that piece? So there's just one unit for $4,000 plus or minus. Is there an annual software maintenance agreement or something, or?
There's not.
Okay.
Okay to move on to the next item?
Yep.
The next item we'd like to purchase is 4 ammunition conversion kits for our new Sig Sauer pistols that we were fortunate enough to buy this budget year. Currently, we do a lot of scenario-based training, and simunitions is essentially you use the same firearm you have, you interchangeable the barrel, and it fires what's called a marking round, if you want to think of it as like a paintball round. That way we can do live scenario-based training where we have actors, we have trainers involved, safety officers involved, and we can also employ a lot of de-escalation techniques so it doesn't get to that point where we have to discharge a firearm. So seeing that we're going to our new firearms, we need new conversion kits, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to purchase those.
Okay. Any questions on that? I don't think so.
And the other item is 5 rugged rubberized keyboards for the cruisers. With COVID, we realized that having rubberized keyboards to clean in between each shift is beneficial, and we would need 5 to complete our setup and then make sure that they're all rubberized to make it cleaner and to make sure no liquids fall into it when they're driving and such.
That one sounds pretty good.
Yeah. And lastly is like to purchase 2 Sig Sauer M400 semi-automatic patrol rifles equipped with sound suppressors and red dot optics. And I wanted to defer to Deputy Chief Tarleton to discuss this a little bit more. I'm sure there's some questions.
Okay.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
So, I guess, so there's probably questions about this. Would I be fair in saying that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
So, all right, so there's a little bit to cover here. So, I guess the first thing I'd want to do is kind of get ahead of the mystique and maybe some of the stigma that's attached to suppressors, which are also referred to as silencers. I can assure you this is not like the Hollywood James Bond type of thing, or the sniper or assassin type thing where it absolutely eliminates the sound of a gunshot. That's not what these do. Like the term implies, it is a suppressor. It suppresses sound. That's literally all it does. It doesn't eliminate the sound. So I kind of wanted to kind of get ahead of that just so you understand exactly what this does. It suppresses the sound. It lowers it. It doesn't eliminate it. So basically, they suppress the muzzle blast and thus decibels. So, you know, some of the research that I did, an 18-inch barrel on a M4 rifle, which is what we use, the muzzle blast will emits a decibel rating of 160 to 165 decibels of peak noise. This can actually be amplified in an indoor environment. So these rifles were purchased for in the event of an active shooter incident. If you're going to be shooting in a confined space, you're shooting in a building, a school, a residence where you have walls, that sound can be amplified. It can be made worse than outside. And I can assure you that outside, in an outside environment on a range, these rifles are extremely loud. So it just becomes almost tenfold when you're indoors. So we're looking to reduce that because what we're looking at here and what we're concerned about is hearing loss in officers, which is a real problem. It's a real issue. I know veterans that have dealt with hearing loss issues that are a direct result of firearms training. Some of them have tinnitus, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a ringing of the ear, which can be varying in intensity. It can cause sleep issues and what have you. So it's a real issue. We've watched plenty of officer-involved shooting videos. I've seen some where officers were actually engaging somebody from a moving vehicle, not something we typically want to do, but in this particular case they had to. And I watched a guy in the passenger seat of a car engaging the bad guy who was shooting back at them. And the guy in the passenger seat starts shooting, and the guy that's driving, his partner, is screaming at him to stop because he can't hear now. And what ultimately happens is the bad guy crashes. They have to get out. They engage. It turns out to be a deadly force encounter. But post-shooting, these guys can't hear each other talking. They can't hear the supervisors and everyone else that's responding talking. I don't know to what extent the hearing damage was, but it didn't sound good. So going back to the decibel rating, I want to make sure I got this right. So the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health indicates that a noise over 140 decibels can cause immediate and sometimes irreparable hearing loss. So the suppressors that we're looking to attach to these firearms, and basically a suppressor, I meant to bring one for show and tell tonight and I forgot. It's basically a metal cylinder, and they vary in length, and they're specific to the caliber that you're shooting, but it's about 5 to 6 inches long. It's a metal cylinder, basically, and it goes on the end of the barrel. That suppressor, most of them, and the ones that we're looking at, can reduce the decibel rating anywhere between 32 and 34 decibels. So with that being said, you're looking at about 160, 165. With the suppressor, it gets you well below that 140 threshold that they consider to be kind of the danger zone for hearing loss. And that's what we're looking to do. Because like I said, you have that muzzle blast, you have that concussion. You know, myself, I've been at the range a few times. Last year we were doing some training, barricade training, and I don't know what I did, but my ear pro, and when I say ear pro, when you hear me say that, I might say that more than once. I'm talking about earmuffs, basically. One of mine kind of slipped off my right ear, and I got done with a course of fire, and even though it was still on, it wasn't completely sealed, my right ear was ringing, and it hurt. And I can just imagine if I didn't have my ear pro on. And the other thing to think about going along the lines of this ear pro discussion, when our officers that are out on the road have to respond to a critical incident, or they're responding to an incident that all of a sudden presents itself and they have to immediately react to it, let's say a deadly force encounter, they don't have ear pro in their car, and it's not realistic for them to be driving around with ear pro on anyways, right? Because they have to hear what's going on. It's not realistic for them to show up at an active shooter event or a critical incident and grab their ear pro and throw it on, because they got to hear the radio. They have to hear each other to communicate. So they don't have that. Our SWAT officers have those helmets and those comms that I think we presented to you folks before. So that ear pro allows communication, and it allows the protection. You can, so basically cuts the sound out, but you can still communicate. Our patrol officers don't have that. They basically just grab their rifle, and if they have the time, they'll grab their helmet, they'll grab their plate carrier, and then they go to the threat. But they don't have hearing protection. And this is something that is serious. This is something that is a concern for us. As administrators, we always want to make sure that we're looking out for the health and safety of our officers, the well-being of our officers, not to mention an active shooter event. You're talking about maybe an office, a school. You also have to consider bystanders, right? So anyone within close proximity of this gun going off is also going to sustain that. We're all people. We all have the same ears. We'd have to worry about those types of issues as well, which could lead to workers' comp claims and God forbid, a lawsuit of a civilian suing the town or what have you, because now they can't hear, even though you went and maybe saved them. Now they can't hear, so they're dealing with that type of issue. So, and the other thing too is I think it's going to make us better neighbors down at Talent Road. So our range is, bless you, our range is down at Talent Road, which is, if you're not familiar with Talent Road, is up the boulevard. It's the water department property where they have their warehouse and where they do most of their coming and going. So we have a pistol range, we have a rifle range down there, but that area borders Talent Road, which is a residential neighborhood. And we try and do our best to be good neighbors as far as when we're doing our training down there. We pick the right times of day, the right days of the week. We don't shoot down there on weekends. But the rifle's allowed. And when we do our use of force training during the summer, we're talking multiple weeks. We're down there banging away with these things. This is going to cut back a lot on those rifle days, quite a bit. The only negative that I can see with these things, honestly, is the cost. I don't know if you guys have the data in front of you with the cost. They're not cheap. Now, SIG gave us this quote. I ended up having a chance to actually handle this rifle, this whole setup, when the rep came to the PD to show us the new handguns. I asked him to bring some rifles along because we have rifles that are currently being deployed right now. I was talking with the chief the other day, probably close to 20 years old. They still work, but just like your car or anything else you have, at some point in time you need to replace it, and because it could become an issue, it could break, for lack of a better way of putting it. So we're always looking to upgrade and do what we can. And SIG basically produces everything in-house now. They were just a firearms manufacturer for a long time. They got into optics. They've got a good reputation with their optics right now. And I think they might have been at some point in time initially outsourcing their suppressors, but now they're making all of them in-house. Talked to a bunch of law enforcement agencies as recently today as the Manchester PD SWAT. I mean, those guys have been there, done that about 100 times, and they said that these suppressors are great. They use them, they abuse them, and no issues, according to their captain. So when I trust his opinion on these things. So I'm trying to make sure I got everything covered here. I also wanted to reach out because I figured maybe one of the questions is who else is using these things? I was blown away. I thought that we might have been trendsetters here by bringing this forward to you folks this evening, but I couldn't have been any more wrong. So I found out today that, and I got really a lot of positive communication from a bunch of chiefs all over the state. But Hanover PD has them, Swansea, Grafton County Sheriff, Wyndham PD, Tufton Borough, Dublin, Andover, Conway, Brookline, Ware, Lyndeborough, Jackson, Rye, Auburn, Grantham. Pelham is in the process of going forward with them. Goffstown is considering going forward with them soon. Hudson is a no right now. I do have some of these chiefs are like, hey, let me know how you make out this evening with this. And Manchester has them. Their SWAT team, I don't know if they're considering at some point going forward with their patrol division. Didn't hear back from Nashville, but I'm assuming with some of these bigger agencies, it's a cost issue. Some of these smaller ones, I think it's a little bit easier to digest the expense of having to go for, doing this. But across the board, I got a lot of good feedback, and basically it's about protecting our guys and looking out for our guys. And not only that, looking out for the citizens of the town, because, we bought these rifles because we're trying to be proactive. We hope that we never have to go to an active shooter incident, but it's one of those not if but when things. So I would kind of look at these suppressors as that. We see that there's a potential problem here, and there is a solution to it, and I think that it would behoove us to start equipping our rifles with these and understand the real purpose of them and why they're beneficial. So.
Finley?
Thanks, Matt. Actually, the suppressor was the least of my questions, to be honest with you. That makes sense to have something like that. My question you started to answer in the end with who was using them, but I'm wondering how many they have, because I know we had a conversation about the purchase of one a little, 4 or 5 years ago, and that's why I thought you would think there were a lot of questions, because I know Tom had concerns back in that at that point in time. I get the idea behind it. I don't know if we had an active shooter, our the immediate call, I'm imagining, would be to Nashua or Manchester to bring in their guys, because we don't do that.
No,
I thought we were
the
containment and
no,
then,
the immediate call is us going in, our patrol officers, not our special response team. It's the officers on the street, they're going in. So that's where these rifles are deployed. Every cruiser has a rifle set up in there, along with the plates, the helmets, and like a go bag, basically, which has extra magazines.
so
And
we
then
have more than one of these rifles already.
We don't have any suppressed rifle.
Not suppressor. The suppressor, I have no problem with that. I meant the rifles themselves. How many of these?
Semi-automatic patrol rifles.
Every cruiser has a rifle in it, and that's been like that for probably
Okay,
close
well-
to 20 years.
All right.
Yeah.
Then I'm not understanding, I guess, what the conversation, I'm not recalling correctly the conversation we had before on, that you picked up a special weapon at one point.
Maybe you're referring to the 40 millimeter less lethal that I presented a couple of years ago.
I'm not recalling, so maybe my questions aren't ready for tonight then.
And if you want to reach out to us anytime, if it pops up, we'll definitely try to get the answer.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to cycle new rifles into the fleet, right? Because as I had indicated earlier, we actually still have some. I mean, we've been pretty good in trying to upgrade the fleet and make sure that we have newer rifles, right? And we've been doing that over the years. So we do have some cars that probably have some rifles that are close to 20 years old. So what we're trying to do is get those out of the cars and replace them with newer rifles. It's the same platform though. It's the same rifle. It's not like I'm going from one type of rifle to something completely different. It's the same gun. It's like if you have a Toyota Tacoma with 200,000 miles, you're looking to get a new one. So it's the same rifle. It's just new.
Okay.
That's all. So it's the same. It's just this particular rifle. And maybe I jumped to conclusions here. I just assumed maybe that you folks were aware of the fact that we had the rifles in the cars. It's just that the only thing we were kind of doing differently this time around was adding a suppressor to it. So that's kind of why I went on my whole spiel there. I'm sorry, but
That was the easy part, I thought.
But yeah, we're just looking to replace the older rifles that we currently have in the fleet.
Okay.
That's what we're looking to do.
And the equipment on this, the only thing that's being added is the suppressor. Right now, we have red dot optics. I know we talked about that during the handguns discussion. That's on all of our rifles right now.
Nancy Harrington?
Okay. I have no problem with getting it, I just want to be confused. So every patrol car now has a rifle,
Correct.
but you're only asking for two.
It was a non-budget.
New ones.
Pardon me. It was a non-budget item. I thought this was a good opportunity for us to save the town some money. We know that they're expensive. And my goal ultimately is to phase out the older rifles
Okay.
and replace them with these.
So how many patrol cars do you have?
10.
So there'll be 8 presently that will have the old kind. 2 will be replaced with these.
Yes,
With the
for patrol
suppressors.
vehicles, correct.
Correct. What do you do with the old rifles?
Typically, we try to get a trade-in value for them.
Okay.
Like I said, when we agreed with the Sauer purchase, the trade-in value for our old Glock handguns that we're currently carrying was about $15,000. So, I mean, we do try to get a trade-in value
Yeah,
to
just
offset
curious.
the cost.
Okay. Thank you, that's all.
Lon?
Yeah, I'm not gonna speak for Nancy, but I'll miss the, change in your practicing from my house. And I'm quite a ways from Talent Road, but I know when you guys are practicing. And I know what kind of weapons I'm listening to.
Just to let you know, I did think of that, I wrote a note. My dog is
Poor dog.
very noise sensitive. I can't walk him when you're shooting the rifles.
Oh.
So I wrote a note that now I
Yeah,
can
the
walk
dog's gonna
him.
be happy.
Only if they're using those two
True.
rifles.
Of course, you've got the range down there for the horseshoe. That area also has a firing range.
Well, they do, yeah.
So who knows who's doing it?
Anybody else? Andy?
So you mentioned you had 8 additional patrol cars after this that you'd have to outfit. QRF or anybody else?
The special response team,
Yeah, anybody additional to the patrol cars that we would be outfitting in the future?
but other than the special response team, they're up to 12 members, and so we're looking at about total wise after this will be about 20.
Okay, 20. And then do you guys have a policy, does anybody bring their own platform, or is it all just issued weapons? They have to use the issued,
Currently, it's all issued.
all issued? Thank you.
I rely on him for all this knowledge. He knows all of it.
The bad part is I don't get to play with any of this stuff. That's the challenging part. But you're right, SIG has some very good optics.
That red dot really intrigues.
It's pretty, this setup in particular was, I mean, I had a chance to go hands-on, and it's about as good as it gets, so it's good.
So, just to reiterate, you said we have how many rifles? Did I hear
Probably-
20? I mean,
So we have 10 in the patrol cars, and then our SRT officers each have a rifle. So those were.
that's assigned to them personally, or what?
Those were, so the department owned, but they're assigned to those SRT officers because they're specifically cited in for those officers. Like to have a budget where we could buy everyone their own rifle at some point in time. But, I mean, this is what we have right now. So, but yes, those officers that are on the SRT have their own assigned rifles that are cited in specifically for them and their rifles.
Now, do those officers also work in the patrol cars?
They do.
Okay. So, but they don't carry their rifle with them when they're on patrol?
They are encouraged to bring their SRT rifle with them when they go out on patrol. Yes, they're encouraged to do that. But if they need to use the rifles that are in the car, they're considered battle zeroed. They have red dot optics, and so they could use those as well. So, but we encourage them to use their own rifles because they're specifically set up for them.
And if I may, just some clarification on the special response team. These, a lot of officers are going to be coming off duty. So if there's a critical incident, all of our marked cruisers that are on the road are going to be at the incident. So we have our officers that are going to be coming from all over town, and they take their gear with them home on a daily basis after shift. It's with them, and they're ready to go. So that's why everyone's assigned their own gear. We don't share gear for those officers, and they have their own rifles as well, so they can respond at any time.
Okay. I guess the presentation doesn't look the best. When you sit here and you read that we're having, 6-hour M400 semi-automatic patrol rifles with sound suppressors and red dot optics, it just sounds very aggressive. And we have tasers, we have pistols. I'm thinking everybody on the force has a pistol, and maybe that's not true. But that's a bunch of pistols running around. And now you're putting rifles in all the cars plus an extra 10 or so that the special response team has.
Correct.
It just sounds like a tremendous amount of force for a town the size of Merrimack.
I don't believe so, Mr. Chairman. We've learned a lot of things over the years with mass shootings and Columbine, and I'll be honest with you, even if I'm inside of a house, I'd rather use a rifle. Be much more proficient in it. And it's a way for us to protect not only the people inside the buildings, ourselves, and also hopefully we can isolate a threat at a distance. Most of these active shooters are over relatively quickly. However, a lot of casualty can be caused in a matter of time, and our job is to get in there and stop the threat. And that's, if it's may be down a hallway and we can take the shot before the shooter shoots someone else, that's where the rifles are really proficient, and that's why we need them.
And the bad guys are running around with these guns. I mean, that's just the reality of it. It is. You see a lot of, not all, but you see many of these active shooter incidents. These guys are going in with semi-automatic rifles. And I got to be honest with you, if I had a choice between confronting this individual with my pistol or doing it with a rifle, I'm going to say rifle every day of the week because it's just easier to shoot, it's more accurate, it's going to provide me a better advantage in dealing with that type of threat. But that's ultimately why a lot of departments all over the country went to rifles, is because of Columbine. It's because of that. It even started back during the LA bank robbery. That's why long guns became popular and why they became warranted, because the bad guys are using these guns, and that's unfortunately the reality of it. And that's why we have them. That's why we need them. So I don't know if that.
Well, I'm not going to try and be smarter than you guys, but I've always been under the impression, especially in confined spaces, that a rifle is difficult to bring around and train on somebody and stuff like that. That a pistol is a lot faster and easier to maneuver in short range distances, which I would expect in a house or something like that.
Primary platform in QCB is the AR platform. Almost all training's done
In
with
QC, what,
Close quarters combat.
oh,
in houses, things like that. It's primary weapons almost, it's always the AR. And then if something happens, then you go to your handgun.
And that's how we train. We train on like QCB stuff to make sure we know how to use the rifles proficiently, get around the corners, not bump into things. Like I said, we train quite a considerable amount for these incidents, and God willing, hopefully nothing ever happens. But I want to make sure that our officers have the right equipment, and this is the right equipment for them.
It's a lot of firepower when you don't need it. But when you need it, you need it.
it's not enough.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not trying to talk against you guys. I'm trying to bring it out and make it as public as we can.
I understand.
That why we're doing this, what we're doing, and things like that. So
I understand.
I appreciate your answers and your candidness. Because otherwise, people are gonna think we're trying to hide something.
I understand, Mr. Chairman, completely.
I guess I don't have any other questions. Penley?
I just need a little clarification if I could. On these communities that you cited that are having these, they have no rifles in their cruisers at this point? The other ones that are waiting for us to see what we do tonight, what are we doing different if we already have rifles in our cruisers?
No, so the ones that I heard back from that list, those are the ones that actually currently deploy rifles in their cruisers with suppressors. So same rifle setup, that same M4 platform is what we call it. So the same rifle platform with suppressors. That list of departments that I read to you currently have them. Some of them actually, again, these are smaller departments, so they can afford to do this.
Sure.
Some of them, their rifles are assigned to that specific officer, which in a perfect world, that's what everyone would be doing. But again, we have budget issues that we have to consider here because of the size of the department and the amount of personnel. But yes, so the one chief that was reaching out to me and spoke to me is considering going forward with it and is going to, I don't know if he needs to present like we are this evening to a governing body or what have you. So he was the one that.
Okay, but what is he seeing, what are we doing different that he wanted to see how it worked? I
So
mean,
most of those agencies have rifles. They're looking at the option of going up to a suppressed rifle. So
just the suppressor.
To add the
really.
suppressor to it.
What
that's
is the
it.
downside of that then? Because that made no sense to me when you were making that the big point. What's the
I think,
difficulty with the suppressor?
well, I think what I was trying to get ahead of tonight is the possible perception of it because of what people might have heard about them or seen them in Hollywood or TV shows. You know, right, you think of, you know, when you see these things, unfortunately, you think of the assassin, you think of the sniper and stuff, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that that's not what we're doing,
Okay.
and that's not the point of these things. You have that negative stigma that's attached to them, and I'm just
I
trying
didn't
to.
even realize that, so you brought it
Yeah,
out
well-
of my head in a wrong fashion. I guess. So, okay.
Yeah, I think if it was a silencer, that is a different connotation than a suppressor. So
And it's
that's why you were.
And that's common. That's another way of how people describe these things, and it's not. This isn't Hollywood with these. It's not. You don't hear it. It doesn't remove the sound. It doesn't eliminate it. It's far from it.
Not if it's only 30 dB, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
And the whole discussion here is over the fact that this suppressor is a $945 adder for a 5 or 6 inch piece of metal, as you described it.
It's expensive. I can tell you though that, you know, when I was talking with the SIG rep as recently as today, because I asked what's the longevity on these things,
Okay,
and
that
he
was my
said
next question.
14 to 15,000 rounds for normal shooting. So I was trying to think of it today when we do our use of force training, our rifle training specifically during the summer months. Per rifle, we might put 1,000 rounds through each rifle, you know, because when we're doing the training, we're using a bunch of rifles because we have a bunch of shooters. So I would say the average would be about 1,000 rounds. Do you think that'd be a fair estimate?
Yeah, maybe lower.
Could be lower. So that's per year. And if you're getting 14 to 15,000 out of a suppressor, these, I'll be well retired by the time these things are going to be reaching their life expectancy. So not something that we're gonna need to replace in 2 or 3 years and spend another 900 whatever dollars, so they're gonna last.
Okay. You've made several comments that smaller agencies could afford these better than bigger agencies. I'm not sure I follow that, because smaller agencies have a lot less money than bigger agencies. But, you know, if a bigger agency has to go out and buy 20 of these, then yeah, it would be
Yeah,
more
well, a lot of
expensive.
these are smaller departments, you know, they're probably
One, sometimes the chief's the only one, you know, 3-4 man per department, so obviously it's a less significant, lump of a cost when they buy 4 new ones. That's, I think, what it references.
But on a per person basis, it's the same. So
Correct, right.
It really doesn't matter. Okay, are there any other questions? Seeing none, we could move to a motion to accept the entire proposal for both fire and police.
So moved. Do we need to be more detailed than that, though? Should we say accept the requested fire department and police department requested items from the Abbey Griffith Memorial Fund? Is that sufficient?
Not to exceed $22,550.
Okay, so put that total in.
Pursuant to Charter Article
Yeah,
8-15 and RSA 3195B.
yeah, exactly. And Charter Article 8-15.
Yep. Which he said.
Okay, I didn't hear that part.
Second.
So you don't need the details, is my point. The requested,
As discussed here at the meeting.
right, right, that's why I was trying to
Okay.
summarize it.
We're not going out and buying 20 rifles instead of,
Right. Well, as presented,
'cause you-
As
unless they
presented.
presented those, right.
Okay, motion was made by Nancy Harrington, seconded by Lon. Any further questions or comments or debate? You guys done? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That passes. Thanks, guys. I
Thank you very much.
appreciate
Appreciate
the
Thank you very
time
much.
and information. Thank you, Chief. Because it was extended and carried on and somebody else threw in a second, I just accepted that one. Sorry. Okay. That brings us to legislative updates from state reps. I do have a letter from Maureen Mooney, which came in this morning, so it was easy enough for us to deal with. Legislative update for March 24th from Representative Maureen Mooney. Greetings, councilors. Last week, the House was in session for 3 full days and evenings, voting on close to 200 bills. Please know the status of the following bills of interest in the House. HB 2022, an act relative to the 10-year transportation plan, which includes a section to transfer Continental Boulevard to Merrimack, passed in the House and is now headed to the Senate. We'll have to deal with that separately. HB 1033 FN, an act prohibiting the use of state or local grants, appropriations, or property tax revenue for lobbying activities, was tabled in the House. HB 1070, an act relative to the default budget in official ballot jurisdictions, passed in the House and is now headed to the Senate. And HB 1268, an act limiting the authority for city council bylaws and ordinances, passed in the House with this amendment, which is linked and is now headed to the Senate. Note the original bill version is also linked in the email, and we'll have that posted on our website, maybe?
yes, we will.
So that, and all of these these House bills have links on them, so you can find out more information about them. My suggestion, this is Maureen speaking, now is to formally contact our state Senator Gary Daniels regarding HB 2022, HB 1070, and HB 1268, as I believe your positions are like mine against these ones that passed. Respectfully submitted by Representative Maureen Mooney. Do you know any more, anybody want to make any more comments on those?
I had discussions with some of our representatives on those 4 bills that were discussed. The default budget bill takes out the spirit of the default budget. It really does. So what happens is that we go through a budget process. Council says, I want to cut everybody in general government, 10 positions. Takes it out of the budget. Now, according to this new law, we have to take it out of the default budget as well. It doesn't give your voters a vote. If people are against making those cuts, they vote no, I want to vote to the default. And I'm not going to approve your budget. I'm going to approve your default budget because I want those positions. What this does now is it takes that out of people's hands, saying, if they made the cut, if the council makes the cut there, they got to make it in their default budget too because those positions aren't needed.
So it's cut regardless.
It's cut regardless. Whereas a couple of years ago, we had a situation where default budget was in and there was a bunch of positions that were cut and those got added back in because that was how the vote went. The other one, 22, I believe, which is Continental Boulevard, we're all aware of that one. That was slipped in the, not even the 11th hour, in the 12th hour, right before the vote, to give it back to Merrimack, and that's an uphill battle fight that we're gonna have to fight with the Senate. I have some suggestions to Senator Daniels to say, let's make it a study. Because what I've seen in researching that bill, DOT has not given their cost of what it is to maintain that section of road. And there's a lot of openings. Are now we maintaining the intersection at 101A and Continental? Do we get all the curb cuts? Do we get the traffic lights? Are they giving us everything, or are they just giving us the road? DOT uses a different mechanism in the traffic lights. So say the Tinker Road light goes out, we have to call a gentleman in to repair that. They don't have the parts, now we have to replace that, and that could be $50,000, $60,000 cost to the town. So that one's, we got a lot more work with Senator Daniels on that to get our point across. And then the last one is basically limiting what councils can do, making rules and ordinances. And I read the amendment, I read the original bill and I read the amendment, and I don't fully understand what the amendment is intended to do, because the amendment is a lot, in my mind, a lot less restrictive of what a council can do, but it still restricts what you can do. So it kind of takes some of this, for instance, COVID, out of the council's hands and puts it up at the state level. Well, if it takes the state 45 days to react to something, that's a 45-day delay that a community could have enacted certain rules or regulations about closing a facility or mask wearing in a facility, or things of that sort.
What was the motivation behind that? Do you know?
Mask. They were mad. That
Literally, it has to do with masks.
basically health officers and stuff, that was a big driving force behind it, is that they think health officers and councils overstep their ability by mask mandates and things of that sort.
Okay, so it was because some councils or wherever made people wear masks.
Mhm.
Ah,
Okay, so again, this is city councils that it's restricting, right?
Right, and
okay.
it's restricting city, but we,
Well, we don't have authority anyway, so.
right, but you make ordinances.
Well, we do.
And you make proclamations, and if there's a flood, you can make a declaration for floods and things of that sort. That could limit some of your abilities to do some of these things.
Right. But my understanding, and I haven't read it, so I don't know, but I thought that it was just saying that if a city council were to create ordinances, they would only be effective for like 14 days without being renewed or something, and would have to go to the state
Something
to
of
be
that.
ratified or
Right.
something like that.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah, that's in that bill as well. So it's restrictive on, and I don't know because it talks about health officers, and we have a health officer here in town. So that would be restrictive on some of the stuff that we wanted to do as well for looking at it. I haven't had our legal counsel review it yet to see how it affects us, because I was not gonna spend money if it didn't get past the House. Now that it got past the House, we gotta
Take a look.
take a little bit more of a
little
look at it to see if, does this bill really affect us if it gets passed? And move forward on that. It just, from all my readings, it's just not, it takes local control away from local areas.
What
and
little
brings it up to
local control we have. We
Yeah.
don't have a lot of local control
No.
as it is.
Right,
My understanding was there were people that were upset that some of the larger cities and towns in the state were forcing businesses to operate in a certain way based on the
Okay.
council's decision and not necessarily based on the state's level of decision for health and things of that nature. And so they're trying to
So that was the
react to
motivation.
that.
that's the motivation on those three. And then, of course, the lobbying one, yeah, why we do not pay a lot of money for lobbying, at New Hampshire, NHMA, who we pay dues to,
Right.
really does what we call our lobbying. They review our bills, all the bills, because there could be 700 of them. They review them and say, okay, this one's hot, this one's hot, this one's coming up next week, and they give us a lot of information. And my point on that was, if you take away the 420 municipalities who donate for them to do this stuff, if you take that away, you're still gonna have lobbyists up in Concord. You're just gonna hear the business lobbyists and not the communities.
Municipalities.
And we'd have to hire somebody to do this for the town of Merrimack, just to go up there and present, okay, I'm going on this bill, I'm going on this bill, you present our case, our case, our case. So I was glad that was tabled, they're studying that a lot more. This has been now, the lobbying one's been the last 3 or 4 sessions, they've been trying to do away with municipal lobbying, they've been trying to put more restrictions on it, things of that sort. But thankfully it was tabled, but those are what Maureen did was, I talked to her, and I've talked to a couple other representatives up there, and it seems like our representatives all voted, for the most part, the way we needed them to vote on this. They just were outvoted by small majority, but a majority.
Should we as a council do anything about 2022 in terms of writing a letter to Daniels or anything?
I was hoping that I could get a meeting with him in the next week or two,
Okay, so you want to leave it at that?
and possibly invite the chair and the vice chair to sit in like we did the last time where Eileen went up to Concord over the toll booths.
Yeah.
To get that going, but I was trying to get that in the next couple of weeks. Because I have to see when it's slated too. When are they gonna talk about it in the Senate? It doesn't make sense to bring them in now if they're not gonna talk about it until May 15th, because he's gonna forget everything we say. And it affects it just doesn't affect Merrimack, it affects everybody. Because
Right.
if they give us the road, there are certain things that the town could do. Don't want to throw our cards on the table, but unfunded mandate comes to my
Certainly
mind right away.
unfunded mandate, yeah. And their argument was that it wouldn't cost as much as we said to maintain it, and
Right.
that they built it for us and
Which
stuff
is
like
a
that,
lie.
which
Which
is
is
not true,
accurate.
so.
Right.
So we ought to reach out to Senator Daniels and invite him to a future meeting if,
Yeah, that's
if that's
something,
the next thing to do,
Perfect.
to see if he can come and talk to
Great.
us about it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can do that.
Okay. Any other state reps? Nobody's in the audience. That brings us to the town manager's report.
Thank you. The repairs to Stoll Road Bridge are nearly complete. Final work is scheduled to occur tomorrow and early next week.
Hello.
Always one. We expect the bridge to be open to traffic next week. Please see road updates on the town website for more updates on this project. The wastewater division of Public Works submitted the annual Capacity Management Operations and Maintenance, CMOM, program report to NHDES and EPA. This report documents our collection systems asset management programs. NHDES recently completed a compliance evaluation audit of the wastewater treatment facility, focusing on the laboratory operations. I'm pleased to report that NHDES concluded that the audit report showed no deficiencies observed, which is excellent. Although we had an early snow melt this year, athletic fields will remain closed due to wet conditions. Updates will be provided on the Merrimack Parks and Recreation website. Merrimack TV will premiere Celebration of Song this Friday night, March 25th at 7 p.m. and the bands next Friday, April 1st at 7 p.m. You can watch them on Comcast Xfinity Channel 21 in high definition at Channel 1071, MerrimackTV.com, or other streaming devices. Additionally, both concerts will play while we wait the election results on Tuesday, April 12th, beginning at 7:30, and these will be live. They're going live for the election results. So anybody who's really interested in the election, doesn't want to come down to the upper elementary school, can watch them on TV. And finally, as part of our MS4 permit, we have to do education. So this next announcement is about this education that we have to do yearly, but we have to get the word out there and we have to get people signed up. So since this is the time of year when people begin cutting their lawns and taking care, the town of Merrimack is joining forces with NHC Grant Extension and Squam Lake Natural Science Center Water Resources and Horticulture staff and others in presenting a free virtual workshop on green grass and clear water. This workshop will teach the do's and don'ts of lawn care habits that keep our rivers, lakes, ponds healthy and clean. The workshop will be held on Monday, April 18th at 6:30 p.m. Registration is required, and you can register on the town's website. It will be up on the town's website. You can click on the pamphlet, and there's a spot to register. But participation, this is part of the MS4 where we have to go out and do education work, and Don has started that program with that. And that is all that I have on my manager's report.
Awesome. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll move on. There's a consent agenda tonight about the consideration of changes to Chapter 178 taxation of the Merrimack Town Code. Can I get a motion to Finley?
I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion by Finley, seconded by Nancy, to move the consent agenda, which is our final reading on Chapter 178 of the Merrimack Town Code. I don't think there's a discussion on a moved consent agenda, so all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0.
The only thing I'd like to say about this, it is in effect as of April 1st, 2022. So it will be included in your exemptions for the year.
For this coming year.
You have the elderly exemption for this coming tax year.
Okay, good. So we made that in time. And you said that the deadline for filing for exemptions and whatnot is April 15th.
Correct.
Okay. Good. So moving on to old business, community garden discussion. Submitted by Town Manager Paul McCallie and Parks and Rec Director Matthew Kasparius. The Town Council to be presented with a plan for the Parks and Rec Department to take over and continue with the community garden plots located at Wasserman Park.
So I can make this real easy for everybody.
Don't.
We can do it. We have the resources to do it. We have talked in collaboration with Parks and Rec and DPW to get the gardens ready. Matt is willing to take it on. We have money set aside from a previous year to get it up and running while we wait for more income to come in. Matt will talk a little bit about needing to raise the amounts. But the million-dollar question before we get into this, is this something the council would like us to proceed with?
For me, if Matt says he can do it, I'm all on board.
Agreed.
Okay.
I don't know why we wouldn't.
Yeah. All right, that makes it easy. Matt will talk to you about why we need to increase the fee from $10 a plot to what Matt is proposing.
Okay. Well, that just cut out half of what I was going to say, which is good.
I knew that. I knew that.
So, jumping ahead, yeah. So, historically, they've only been bringing in about $300 a year, and they're spending about $5. And so, they're filling about half the garden with that amount of money. But there's, just costs with, putting it down the the string and the rope and the ryegrass and, you know, that type of thing that's where the expense comes in. The administrative side of it is actually pretty easy. It's already actually set up and ready to go in my registration software. So once we know what the fee is, then I can make it go live tomorrow, you know. But yeah, so with the current fees, we're only covering a little more than half the cost of what it costs to maintain it, never mind my time, Public Works time, et cetera. And so my thought was to raise it from $10 and $15 for residents and non-residents to $20 and $25. So then at least we're covering those direct expenses. And that's really, as Paul said, really the only question.
Does anybody have any questions?
I have
Nancy?
no questions, but it makes perfect sense. It's a very, and even if that's a very reasonable cost, because they're getting soil that's all prepared for them.
Right.
So I think it's a great, do you need a motion to approve of that?
Well, you're gonna make a motion right now?
I'd be happy to
We'll
as
talk
soon
to
as
that
I.
motion as soon as you make it. Just hang on.
Oh, if you want to make, go ahead. Do you want to make a question?
You wanna comment first?
I'll look.
I have a question in terms of how many non-resident plots do we anticipate being utilized each year? Do you have any idea?
I don't, unfortunately. I have not yet been able to secure the list of garden plot holders from last year. Apparently Bob McCabe still has that information, and I have not been able to get it yet. So I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that historically the garden's only been about half full anyway, so it's not like we're gonna sell out.
I guess
If
I
we-
was under the impression they did sell out every year, so
Right.
that's interesting.
No. And of course, if we're getting to the point where we're almost ready to sell out, then we'll definitely, Merrimack residents get a priority in the final areas. The one thing that, there are a couple of organizations that they used to give bigger plots to, like Scouting
Right.
used to do food and, garden for food and stuff like that as part, one of the troops wanted to do that. We'd still go about going ahead and letting them use the land because they're really donating fresh vegetables to either the food bank or to a veterans organization, things of that sort. So we look at that. To answer your question, Lon, it would be somebody who might be working at the Fidelities or another, they live out of town, but they work in Merrimack that would want to use it. We're not going to get people from like Nashua that are going to want to come down 20 minutes to garden and then go back home. It's somebody who's already in town.
That's an interesting perspective. The only questions I've had have been from Nashville residents who hadn't taken advantage of the garden spots, I believe at Greeley Park, and wanted to know if there was any available in Merrimack. Thank you.
Interesting.
Do we, out of curiosity, do we know what Nashua charges for their garden plots, or
I don't know off the top of my head.
might be something to find out, just out of curiosity, because we don't want to be stealing their people if we're cheaper or something like that. Barbara, did you have a question?
Yes, how big are the plots?
10 by 10.
Square feet or regular feet?
10 feet long, 10 feet wide, 100 square.
100 square feet. Okay? Okay.
I'm ready for a motion now.
It looked like you were calculating something. Any other comments or questions? Lon?
Yeah, the timing of looking to raise fees in this counselor's estimation couldn't be worse.
Well, that's probably true, but
I understand all of the implications, but thank you.
And the other thing is that the reason why they were able to keep those fees a little bit lower is because they were utilizing monies that they accumulated in the past and other activities that they received funds for, such as the farmer's market, where it was $125 for the season, and there was really hardly any cost associated with that. So they were using the other money to keep the fees low. since we're only going right now with a farmer's market, we just need to
breaking
raise it up a
even.
little bit to try to break even. Community garden. Yeah, community garden, we're just trying to break even with the community garden. So that's why we're looking to raise them up a little bit. And that includes water. So you water your, you can go water your plants. You don't have to bring your own water. We have water there. So that fully functional plot, all you have to do is weed it and plant. Don't even have to fertilize if you don't want to.
Right.
Barbara?
The Victory Garden plots, based on their website. Nashua residents only, May to October, $30 per year. Plots are assigned on a first come, first, and it's 20 by 20. Yeah, or 20 by 40.
Wow.
That's just more to weed, so ours is better.
Yeah.
It
Okay,
doesn't take care
I
of
think we're good
critters.
there. I don't have any problem with the prices that they're quoting here. I mean, I understand if people are gonna go grow their own tomatoes, they have to grow a lot of tomatoes to pay $25, but that's possible on 100 square feet. And some folks are really enjoying it. Most people are probably going out for the therapeutic factor, and the cost probably isn't a big deal, but I think it's exciting that you're gonna take it over and be able to run it. At least give it a shot this year and see how it goes. I don't know what they were doing as far as advertising or being able to reach out to people. We'll have to find some way to reach out through your Parks and Rec website, I guess, and just word of mouth and everything else, but I'm good. You made the motion already, is that right?
Not yet, but I'm ready.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to approve the increase of plot rental fee for the Merrimack Community Garden from $10 for residents and $15 for non-residents to $20 for a resident and $25 for a non-resident.
Second.
And approve the Parks and Rec Department going ahead and managing and running the community.
Oh, that has to be
Garden.
part, okay.
Yeah. And allowing Parks and Recreation
And
to
approve
continue
the
with the community garden.
Parks and Rec administering the,
Community
or
garden,
monitoring the community garden.
and that's part of your second. Motion was made by Nancy Harrington and seconded by Barbara Healy to move forward with the community garden project as presented tonight, with the increased fees. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you
Okay.
for taking it over.
We'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Are you opposed? Opposed. So that passes 6-1-0 with Lon Woods in opposition. You may.
Not opposed to Parks and Rec taking it over, opposed to the rate hike.
To the what? Rate hike?
Rate hike.
Okay. I understand. Thank you. And thanks for that clarification. So are you good, Matt? Thank you. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Next on our agenda, the town council to discuss a Merrimack private well owners PFAS grant program reimbursement policy for reimbursement for the installation of a point of entry system, point of use system, or hookup to MVD public water.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm coming back again with the policy, the revised policy. I did some formatting changes. I did some other changes to it. I didn't change the content we discussed. I added the point of use system into the language, cleaned up a little bit about what we're really looking for with what they have to provide us. Broke out a page of useful links, so if somebody wants that, it's on a separate page, and they can just look at those useful links. I had conversations, because I started filling out the final application this week. So I had some conversation with Amy, our DES contact, about what I need. And one of the things that I thought was kind of funny is that usually when we get a grant from the state, we get the money and then we have to accept the grant. They want it all locked, tied, and barreled, tied up in a neat bow to the executive council saying that Merrimack already did a motion. They're going to accept the grant when it comes in, so you don't have to worry about it, and they're ready to spend the money. So what I would need tonight is two things from the council. One, is the policy acceptable as written? And two, if it is acceptable as written, I would need a motion from the council to basically say that the town of Merrimack will accept the grant if approved by governor and council. The ARPA money, if approved by governor and council. We'd still have to do a public hearing once we get the $1,072,000 that we applied for. We'd still have to do the public hearing to put into play, but at least that will give us some leadway with being able to do this final application and get it up to the state before their June 1st deadline, so they can get it on governor and council, so we can actually start getting some of this money to the residents. I got a phone call this week or last week about this program, and I will say it now, as well as what I said to the resident. I cannot advise you of what to do and what not to do. I can only advise you, if you're going to do it, how to get reimbursed for it. There was a lot of questions about, well, should I go ahead with a point of entry or should I go with a point of use? I can't answer that. It's individualized. You know, it's like, right now, I'm a certified public accountant, and working as a finance director, people used to come in and say, how do I fill out my W-4? I can't give you advice on how to fill out your W-4 as an employee. I can tell you what you need to fill out and what this means, but I can't tell you how to fill it out. And the same thing with this. I cannot tell people which system they should use or not use, or which vendor they should use or not use. That is all personal choice. That's all up to individuals. I can explain what we need for you to get approved and your money reimbursed. And I expand, one other thing on the policy, I just thought about it when I said expand. We expanded a little bit because of the state of New Hampshire. They can do testing, but if you're in a area of town that hasn't had an exceedance, they're a little less likely to go out to that area to test your well. So if you applied and they have come back and said, well, you know, we'll be out there at XYZ date, and you wanted to go and then get your own test, we would have put that towards reimbursement if it's over the limits. So if it's under the limits, you don't get reimbursed for if you use a private company to test your well. But if you're over the limits and you put in a point of use of point of entry or connect up MDD, you can use that as part of that $6,500 up to reimbursement fee. So that was something else that we added, I added, and Nancy added, actually. So we put that in there to help alleviate some of this stuff, because there are parts of the town where there might be not a large number of wells that are over the limit, and the state might not want to go out there to do it, where there's other areas where they are trying to go. And the other thing with the state of New Hampshire, and the reason why we thought of this, is that they're not just doing Merrimack, they're not just doing Bedford, they're not just doing Amherst, they're doing the whole state. And they got these gentlemen going out testing the wells on the whole state, water in the whole state. So it could delay somebody's beginning process of seeing if they're over the limit.
Okay, so refresh my memory that this grant opportunity is only available to people who exceed the state limits.
Correct, and outside the decree limits.
And outside the decree limits, right. So if you do exceed, and you'd have to get it tested either by the state or by private means,
But
to
you
prove
should-
exceedance.
You should try with the state first, and then get the denial or the delay that the state can't get to you, and then you can go to a private. You can't just jump to a private lab.
Oh, you can't just go out and get it tested.
You gotta
on your
go,
own.
you
try
gotta
to get it done
try
at
to
the
get it
state.
done through the state. I'm trying to save the expense for the resident and help of as many residents in Merrimack that want to take this opportunity as well.
Nancy,
When you're ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Well, I just want to make a comment. I think this is really well done. First of all, I like the way you separated out the actual application and then the explanatory packet. I think it's very clear, thorough, and yet concise, okay? So I think it's, and I like especially the useful links. I mean, you could have made this a 30-page packet, which nobody would have read, by the way. You know, which would have discouraged people. But by limiting it and really making the application one page, I think it really fills the bill. So my compliments. And Nancy, I know you help with that too. So compliments to you as well.
She was my second set of eyes and third set of eyes and fourth set of eyes.
Well, she's very knowledgeable as
Yes,
well.
she is.
So it helped a great deal, I'm sure. So I think it's very well done, so I'd have no problems.
Okay. Andy?
On how to apply section, it says you have to submit to the state and receive written denial and then go pay out of pocket. Is that 100% the way it's gonna go? I mean, will the state potentially say, yeah, we'll come test your well?
State could.
So
The
this
way
is-
I read this, I don't see an option for you to qualify if the state says they'll come.
Well, the sentence right above that, for the town to consider reimbursement of private well testing costs, the homeowner
Oh, it's just the
must.
testing cost. Thank
Just
you
the
very much
testing
for that
cost.
clarification. Reading comprehension goes a long ways.
It's
Thank you.
early.
Lon? Lon?
Yeah, to further that, when we get down to the last two paragraphs of how to apply, it talks about the rebate payment is solely for reimbursement of installation of POET or POU systems or hookup to MVD, although well testing costs under the conditions outlined above may be considered. What does that mean?
Well, just what Paul talked about a minute ago.
Yeah, with that
If you go through, if you get approval at the state, as the very first paragraph, they may consider paying for that. Is that what you're
the
saying?
state's gonna come out and do their testing, and it's gonna be zero cost to the homeowner and zero cost to the town of Merrimack. If the state denies and says, we can't get out to, not denies, but we can't get out to test you, then you can go get your testing, but you have to prove to us in an email or a letter or something stating that you went to the state first and they came back and said, you're delayed, it's gonna be 6 months, it's gonna be a year, it's gonna be, you know, we're not gonna test you in order to go out to your private company.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, I guess the other question, or to really amplify it, $6,500 is the maximum they can get reimbursed.
Correct.
So that would include the testing and the installation,
That includes everything,
up to $6,500 total.
total, right?
Okay. That's just to allow us to have enough to spread out amongst different people across the
Yes,
town.
yeah, across the town, because,
There's only so much money, and this goes until it's used up,
correct, correct,
or 2026.
right. And if
Nance?
if we use it up in 3 months or 6 months, we can always apply again. If there's money left over, there's money left over, but, you know, trying to be fair to everybody, and that's why we went with a little bit higher amount than some communities, is because we were looking at, you know, we didn't wanna, we're saying it's 185 homes or 185 wells, but it could be 225 wells, because not everybody's gonna do point of entry. You know, people might not wanna do the system because it's gonna run their well dry, trying to fill up the carbon chambers with water to get out to their house, or why do I need it in my bathtub when all I'm gonna be using is in my kitchen? So let me put a point of use in, which is roughly $1,000 to $1,500 depending on who you use and what system you need to put in, how it has to tie into everything in your kitchen. So, you know, that's why we want that amount, so.
Okay, Nancy?
Yeah, I
Murphy?
was just gonna say, one of the, to Lon's point, about why the testing may be, reimbursable, just because there is that maximum as well of $6,500, depending upon what the person chose. If that testing was gonna put them over the $6,500, then it wouldn't be eligible. So it was to acknowledge that that would be a criteria for eligibility, but that could still be precluded should that amount, should they go over the $6,500 max. And the only other thing I was gonna say is, to anybody that might be listening, is, to Paul's point, about people not knowing whether they should invest in the point of use or the point of entry treatment. On the DES website, there are actually documents specific to that you can look up, and it says, what should I get? So that might just help people, and certainly it's a personal choice, but that information is there, and it's provided by DES. So I just wanted to mention that.
And is that this fourth from the bottom link on the page?
I think,
The guide to ensuring safe drinking water, selecting the right drinking water treatment option.
yes, that's, yeah.
Yeah,
included
so
there.
we have a link there for people to use that.
Yep.
But again, the town's not gonna tell them what to use.
Exactly, yep.
Right, no. Or who to use.
Andy?
I'll just say, I think this is a great benefit to the town, and I appreciate Nancy, you running this to ground. I know you put a lot of work into it, so, thank you very much. I think it's a heck of a benefit.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody supporting it. I think it's a great opportunity for people, because especially this group of people who've been left on their own with nothing. So thank you to all of you and Paul for working so hard to help us get it, because it's show me the money. I want to see it come to Merrimack.
So, we need a motion that, are you prepared to make a motion?
Sure.
Nancy?
Yep.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the program policy as presented tonight and accept the grant funding, the ARPA grant funding, if approved by Governor Council.
Second.
Is that sufficient?
And town manager sign any and all documents necessary,
And that too.
all that fun
Et
stuff
cetera.
with it.
So motion made by Nancy Murphy, seconded by Barbara Healy. If there are no other questions, we'll call for a vote. All those
Before
in-
we do, could you just read that? I just want to make sure, because
Okay.
I don't want to have to come back a fourth time.
Sure, I can add stuff too. I was a motion to approve the program policy as, we could call it the PFAS grant program policy as presented, and accept the grant, the ARPA grant funding when approved by Governor Council.
The
And,
town council will accept.
Yes.
and the town council will accept the grant, the ARPA grant funding if approved by, or when approved by Governor
When
Council.
approved by
Governor
governor
Council.
council. Yes, yes, that will work.
Good enough?
Good enough, yes,
Good enough. And seconded by Barbara Healy.
And you get to sign.
All those in
yes.
favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. Thank you, Paul and Nancy.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That brings us to I think it's our last item on the, no, yes, under new business. The second quarter financial update submitted by the Finance Director, Tom Bolin. Town Council to be presented with the second quarter 2021-22 budget year financial update. Welcome back, Tom,
Thank
to
you.
the front of the table instead of hiding in the back. See, he was gonna try and be cool and do that without his glasses. and he
Yeah,
do it.
couldn't do it. Could not do it.
Glad I have my phone when I go to the grocery store, so I can take a picture.
And expanded.
You can do that.
If I forget these, I'm in deep trouble. Yes. Leaves in the skull, it looks like number 11 right here. You don't see it here.
So I would say this is the second quarter financial report, and we're about to vote on next year's budget, so just, It's always fun to be half a year behind here or something. So you're looking to expand it to presentation mode, or?
I am.
I think it's down on the bottom, right?
Right next to the minus sign.
Where is it? Is it?
Up top, if you go slideshow
Or
up
no,
top,
up,
right above notes, slideshow, keep going up, 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 over, over, over. There, right there,
Yep.
right there, slideshow. From the beginning.
From the beginning. There we
from
go.
the beginning.
All right, I
All
apologize.
right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having me here to do our regular review of the quarterly financial results. We are looking at the second quarter or the first 6 months of the fiscal year, which is the period from July 1st of 2021 through December 31st of 2021. And as we typically do, well, as you'll remember, when I was here to do the first quarter review at the time, I said that we were looking good through the first 3 months and expected that we would be on track with the budget for overall appropriations, that we'd have sufficient appropriations to fund the expenditures of the town through the fiscal year. And I'm happy to say the same can be said of where we stand through the first 6 months of the year. We typically look at some of the areas of significant magnitude in terms of our expenses as well as our revenues when we do this. The fact of the matter is that wages, benefits, and payroll taxes comprise about 70% of the total appropriations in our budget on an annual basis. So a lot of what we'll look at and talk about is going to be wage and wage-related items. This chart sets forth the regular wages by department for the first 6 months of the fiscal year. And these are wages without overtime. These are just regular wages. So you wouldn't expect us to, you'd expect us to be in pretty good shape with regard to regular wages, because we don't hire for unbudgeted positions, and we don't just hand out raises unless they've been approved and authorized. But looking at this can tell you some things about what's going on with the town's workforce, and it can help explain some of what we're going to talk about later in terms of employment related expenses. So you would expect, well, every year we budget for full employment, as we need to do. You got to have the money in the event that you have people in their positions for the entire year and there's no turnover and whatnot. The reality is there's always going to be some, but we do have to budget for full employment. But if you look down at the department breakdown, you can see some of the areas. If you look at that last column of percent of budget remaining, there are several departments where the percentage is well, or certainly in excess of 50%, being 6 months through the year. Fire, police, communications in particular are some of the departments that have significantly more than 50% of the budget and regular wages remaining. And that reflects the fact that there are open positions in those departments. There has been turnover. Some of those positions are obviously require specialized training, so they take some time to fill, and that's really kind of what you're seeing here, and that's going to, as I said, explain some of what we talk about a little further down the road in terms of overtime requirements and things of that sort. There is one department where the amount of remaining budget is a little bit less than 50%. I just wanted to talk about that briefly. It's a Public Works Administration department.
it's a relatively small department, and they have some engineering interns that work only in the summer months that kind of skew the first half of the year because we don't have that expense. We only have that expense in the summertime. So that's why that's a little bit under that.
And
that won't.
additionally there, we had 2 interns in particular that came back for the month of December to help Dawn with the MS4. They've been with the town for 3 years now. They were in a master's degree program. They were getting ready to finish up. They actually graduated or will graduate in May. And they offered to come back to help her finish up some of the MS4 stuff. I saw that as an opportunity to bring some interns back in that knew what they were doing. They were very highly regarded in the department as well as with other interns as they work through. So that they don't, our interns don't get paid a lot. They get paid $15 an hour. So it wasn't a big ask to just bring them back for an additional month. But that's also one of the reasons why that's down a little bit, is because we did bring them back 2 of them back for an additional month of about 4 weeks of work. So, and we got a lot of work out of them, such as what I talked about in my manager's report.
Mm-hmm. Great.
I also just wanted to mention that in addition to turnover and retirements, another thing that factors into the regular wage numbers is people out on short-term or long-term disability. We get reimbursed from the insurance company for employees that are out. So those expenses don't get reflected in these regular wage accounts. And the fact is, we have had a fair amount of people out on disability. Some of it's pandemic related, others just kind of normal course of business. Disability and workers' comp works the same way. So that's something else to think about when you look at these regular wage numbers. Health insurance is another significant expense to the town. If you look at where we stand compared to prior years, we are down a little bit from last year, as we expected to be in this year's budget, because our rates did come down about 4.5% in the current fiscal year compared to the prior. So that decline from the prior year was anticipated. Down at the bottom, I've noted what the annual budget is for health insurance. It's a little bit over $3.5 million, and for the first 6 months of the year, we have spent $1,572,000. So we've spent 45% of our budget for the year. So that kind of goes along with the fact that we're a little under budget on regular wages because of open positions. We're also see that effect play through in the health insurance cost for the first 6 months. The story is a little bit different when it comes to, actually it's quite a bit different when it comes to New Hampshire retirement. You can see in this chart that the expenditure levels in the current fiscal year for all 3 categories of employee, Group 1, fire, and police, are significantly higher than they had been in any of the prior years. But again, that was anticipated. We knew that the rates, the mandated rates, went up significantly by more than 20% across the board when we were preparing this budget. So if you look at where we stand with regard to the annual budget for retirement contributions, noted down at the bottom here, that annual budget number is a little over $3.3 million. And we have spent $1,675,000 through the first 6 months. So we're at a 51% level spent. And really the primary reason that we're slightly ahead of that budget figure is what we're going to talk about next, which is overtime. We have incurred a significant amount of overtime expense, particularly in the areas of fire and police, along with communications. And we pay those same percentage retirement contribution rates on the time and a half of overtime that is incurred. So that results in us being slightly over budget when it comes to the retirement numbers. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense, but I'm curious, we factor in a time and a half overtime amount. Do we not factor in a retirement contribution along with that, or?
We do at our budgeted overtime levels. You're going to see that we're over budget
Over budget
when
on
it
the
comes to
overtime.
overtime. So as a result, we're also over budget in retirement.
Okay.
Speaking of overtime, this chart is a little hard to make a lot of sense of. It's really more to show that the overtime in our fire and police departments kind of dwarf the overtime that we incur in any of the other departments. So you can see with regard to fire, and this is the comparison to prior year actuals, that fire is actually slightly below where they were at last year in terms of overtime, but they are significantly ahead of where we budgeted them to be. And police is well in excess of where they were last year in overtime, and are also significantly ahead of what we had budgeted for. Again, we're talking about positions where if we have vacancies, if we have people out on disability, we still got to have the right levels of staffing in those departments to protect the town and its residents safely. So the way that happens is through the use of overtime. So there's kind of this is the other side of that regular wage situation where we were under budget there. The result is particularly in those functions, that has to be made up for in overtime.
So if you were to balance out between the wages having extra money and the overtime that we're over, that balances out at this point? Or?
At this point, it does. It's something we're going to continue to monitor closely. But at this point, it looks like it's all gonna work out in the end, as you would hope that it would.
Okay.
This chart kind of gets rid of fire and police so that you can kind of look at what's going on in other departments. Again, compared to the prior year, you can see that overtime is actually down significantly in general government. It's down in highway, and it's down in the category of other departments here. It is up in communications and in solid waste. Again, the communications kind of goes along with the fire and police, same kind of situation. They have had open positions, they've had people out on disability, and that's a job that needs to be adequately staffed, and so they've had to use overtime in order to get there. And actually, the story holds true as well in solid waste. Trash has got to get moved, and if people are out, they've had to borrow personnel from highway for a significant portion of the year to get that job done, and have incurred more overtime than we had budgeted for as a result. I think this is one of the, it's really in large part a result of the COVID pandemic. I think what we've seen in terms of absences, as well as being a difficult job market. It's difficult to replace people that do leave, takes longer. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing, just something as simple as if you think about the way we used to operate, you used to think nothing of kind of fighting through the sniffles and toughing it out and coming to work. You can't do that anymore. So those are the kind of things that have impacted these numbers, but that hopefully will kind of normalize as we go forward here. Although we've been saying that now for a couple of years. So, one of the other things I'll point out as I looked at this a little bit more closely and was curious about the solid waste numbers, had Kyle and Chris Perot, who's the foreman out at the transfer station, kind of do some investigation, and that they also reported that our waste volumes are way up. And again, I think a lot of that is kind of pandemic related. People are home more, they're creating more trash at home where they used to spend a significant portion of their days elsewhere at their places of business. People have also done a lot of projects around their home, created a lot more construction and demo type trash than we're used to seeing. So that's also contributed to the overtime in that particular department.
Lon, do you have a question?
Not a question, just a comment, but I think it's been persistent at the transfer station because of the Saturday. And we pick up someone from highway who's already worked 5 days. Just,
Yep.
And we've always had the balancing act of how much overtime do we budget for versus, I could hiring another person, and if I wanted to, I could say, yeah, we're going to double the overtime for solid waste from 22,000 to 44,000, but does that make sense? Because it's coming from other departments, but when you look at this slide here, it's telling because like fire's at 25.9%. I can tell you right now, I've had 3 guys out, long period of time, workers' comp. I fill those positions. I've had 3 openings. We're not at 11 back then, we're at 11 now. Got to fill those positions. The fire chief is well aware of this, the police chief as well. We have 3 vacancies in police. Got to have our sectors covered. He came in, yep, okay, we got salary savings, here you go. Communications, we're down 2. That's why the overtime a little bit higher. We're down 2. We've had a lot of COVID in communications as well. Got to cover those shifts with overtime during this period. So it isn't we're willy-nilly saying, oh yeah, go ahead, work your overtime. We have legitimate reasons why, and they have to come to me and say, because I check overtime every week in the payroll, I circle every overtime that's out there. I circle, see how we're doing in highway. I can tell you right now, highway, we're fine. Even with all those storms, that Saturday storms we have, we're fine. If we get another storm in April, we might not be fine. But right now, we're fine. Knock on wood, hopefully everything works out. No heavy rains or things of that sort. So it's over. But so those kind of deals. Solid waste is one of those items where if one of the people, four employees, that 2 in recycling, 2 in trash disposal, if one of them is out on a Saturday, I've gotten emails from 5 out of 7 of you. What's going on at solid waste? The recycling center, it's over the top. Somebody's out on a Saturday, That's what it looks like. So we got to bring somebody in to try to get the material out and off the floor and into containers and things of that sort. So that's where we're looking at with the overtime. Yeah, we're at 51%, okay, of our New Hampshire retirement because of some of the overtime numbers. But overall, in salaries and looking at salaries, we're in good shape. We're in good shape for salaries. And the reason why I say it is because the salary money is the town manager's money. Departments can't spend, if they got a savings in salary, they can't spend it down below on anything else unless they come to me and say, hey, I want to buy, our guns. Okay, yeah, you can use some of your salary savings. Or I need to buy a car because it failed inspection and it's rotted. Okay, do we have salary savings? So we look at these things. So they have to come to me to offset that salary money. They can't just spend the salary money. So in looking at the overtime, it's the same thing. If they're over on their overtime, I meet with every department head bi-monthly, so once every other week. And we go over it, and that's one of the topics to some of these departments. How are you doing? So it isn't willy-nilly. It isn't like we're trying to boost people up. And like Tom said, some of these positions take a while to hire. We can't just bring in a police officer off the street and say, here, go to work. There you go. We have to make sure we have the right fit. We have to make sure we have the right people in fire. That, we can't just bring any paramedic in to do the job. We have to bring somebody who's going to fit and that isn't going to hurt a patient and knows what they're doing, not just that they got the paramedic. So a little bit long-winded, but just know, I want the people of Merrimack and the council to know, we do look at this stuff on a regular basis, and we are in good shape for salary money and benefit-wise.
Andy?
So just education on my part. Are you able to manage at the bottom line if fire runs out of money and there's still salary savings somewhere else? Can you plus them up?
If fire has a, right
And
there,
that's just an example.
we'll take the example of fire. They have a $10 million budget. They're allowed to spend $10,619,000. If they spend $10,620,000, we'd have to come into the council and ask to move money from another department to cover that. And that happens in the June period. We haven't had to do that because we've always managed to say enough here, boom. And for, like, general government has $5.1 million. That has every little, IT, legal, things of that sort. So we look at some of this stuff, and as we come down, we make sure there's money in the bottom line of that department. Police and fire are a little different because it's department, and fire department includes 03 fire and 06 code enforcement. So you have to add those two together to see where they're at. Police, 04 and 05, communications and police, that's one department. Underneath one department, they get added together. DPW has administration, highways, solid waste, equipment maintenance, building grounds. They all get added together. Building and grounds might be overspent, but one of those other divisions have to cover that expenditure.
Perfect, thank you. For me, just some rough math on the overtime numbers. I guess the ones I would worry about would be fire and police, but I guess when you start combining those with code enforcement and communications, maybe they're gonna be all right, but it just looks like to me it's gonna come down to the wire if I do some simple math.
Simple math, I look at it when I do my projections. I look at what they're saving in salaries and what they have in overtime. The last 3 that I have done, the overtime's netting out
Okay.
on salaries. Plus, because there's so many openings that they're netting out.
With the wage savings, it looks like it's gonna be close, but I wasn't aware that those accounts merge and considered as one, so, thanks.
It's considered as one department. They're
Right,
divisions
yeah.
underneath one chief. He's
Yeah,
the
it rolls
department head.
up to one, yep, got it.
But the answer to your question, I think, is that the town operates on a bottom line. The town council is responsible for that. The departments are responsible for their departments. If we need to shove full funds between departments, the town council has that authority to do that.
You're the only ones I can't, and I can't remember that ever happening.
We had a shuffle.
It has.
We had a shuffle money last year when we bought the radios around from other departments.
That was,
Yeah.
okay, but it wasn't based upon an overtime,
No,
No.
not based on
not
overtime.
personnel.
Well, welfare, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we had to do it because of the housing. Overspent the housing number. So we had to move some money from another department to cover that, but
That's right.
it is
Very rare,
very rare that we'd have to do that.
surprisingly so.
Back to you, Tom.
Okay, I'm still here. This next slide does look, and we've already kind of looked at it a little bit, but it looks at overall expenditures by department and where we stand. You've got your annual budget in the first column. The year-to-date expenditures through the first 6 months are in the second column. That third column is a subtotal of what's remaining in the budget after you take out the actual expenditures. This next column is kind of a funky one. It's an accounting thing. Encumbrances are amounts that we've committed to spend, but we haven't actually paid out the dollars yet. Things that we have on order, things that we have contracts for, things of that sort. So that, when you take out the encumbrances, that brings you down to what you have really remaining uncommitted, I guess, in your budget for the remainder of the year, and then the percentage of that in the final column. So in those cases where you do have less than 50% of your budget related, it's really due to that encumbrance category. Just as an example, in the case of assessing, we obviously use a contract assessor. We have a contract with the assessing company to do that work, and that is in the amount for the entire year is in that encumbrance column. So that's why it looks like we've got less than half of the money to spend, but we're really in fine shape with regard to assessing, because that takes us through the rest of the year on that contract, and that's what's happening there. If you look at what just the first two columns, what we've spent versus the total annual, we're right about on track at that 50% level or close to it. Similarly, in communications, we've got a big encumbrance there for equipment purchases that we've committed to. That's why that number's down a little bit. And same thing in highway. Those are equipment contracts, paving, road improvements, things of that sort that are in that encumbrance number. But if you look at the first two columns, we're right about at where we should be. So unless you guys have specific questions about these numbers, we can probably move past this. I will tell you that this shows that we're in pretty good shape.
I'm okay with it. The encumbrances always boggles my mind to try and figure out how that works to understand.
It is a little convoluted.
From a layman's terms,
yeah.
36% or 30% left of your budget. Well, okay, yeah, you have encumbrances, but is that 30% enough to get you through all your salaries for the rest of the year? And so I depend upon you and Paul to tell us that you've got that under control.
That's what we look at. And
you looked at those kind of details already.
Yes, and it is under control.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Revenues is something we always look at as well. Obviously, revenues kind of end up going right to the bottom line in terms of what we have to raise through taxes. If You know, if we have any kind of unexpected windfalls when it comes to revenues, it's going to reduce the amount we have to raise through taxes. On the other hand, if we fall short in what we're bringing in on the revenue side, the amount we have to raise is going to be higher than we had originally anticipated. So it is something we need to look at and focus on. Some of the areas that we look at here, auto registrations is always a biggie. We've got, we brought in $2,890,000 through the first 6 months, and the budget number is 5.6, so we're just a little bit over 50% through the end of December. I have looked at these numbers through the next 2 months through the end of February, and we have, we're still right on track. They're not going to be any
over by
windfall
500,000
in auto registrations. We'll but we should be right about at that $5.6 million number that we had budgeted. Things have slowed down a little bit, but we're still okay at this point.
Okay, good.
Building permits, we have received $115,000 in building permits through the first 6 months. And our annual budget number is $180,000. So we brought in 64% of the budget through the first 6 months. I think Paul has talked about this before. We should be okay here. Wouldn't expect a lot of permits were pulled in the fall. I don't know that we're going to see a huge amount of additional activity in the spring. We should certainly hit our numbers. We're not going to probably exceed them by a great deal. And then the interest income on our cash reserves, we've talked about repeatedly for many, many months now. The numbers are way down from what they were 2, 3, 4 years ago. We're even a little bit down compared to where we were last year. We have seen the first move by the Federal Reserve in the interest rates just last week, and we've been talking to our banks about rates, and we do expect to see some upward movement there. It's apt to be slow in coming, but we are going to get there. So, it is what it is at this point. It's something that we're going to do as best we can to maximize those earnings, and hopefully that'll get a little bit easier as the rates increase over the remainder of the year. So
Yeah, that's a two-edged sword though, right?
it is. Yep. To the extent we do any additional borrowings, right, we're going to be paying more on that end. Right.
That is true. However, we have some windfalls that we received, such as an insurance rebate in the excess of $100-something thousand. Some other windfalls that we did receive that we weren't anticipating. So overall, revenue-wise, we should be fine. And the goal is always been for the last 11 plus years is that if you know your revenues are short, you're making it up on the appropriation side. Our goal is not to dip into overexpend the appropriations if the revenues aren't going to hit there, which eventually dips into what you put into fund balance or take out of fund balance. So we try to balance off. If we know we're going to be short in revenues, we try to cut back some of our expenditures to offset that so that we're not dipping into the fund balance numbers or the fund balance to offset our budgetary revenue numbers.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So moved. Oh,
Nancy
oh,
Murphy is moving the minutes of April 24th. Is there a second? Finley? Any corrections, changes, or adjustments? Nancy?
it's February 24th, right?
February 24th.
Yeah, okay. On page 2, that second to last paragraph, like 3 lines up, it says, it starts with, then stated that if you were not in the checklist, meaning you have, it should be not voted, not note voted.
I'm sorry, where were you?
Page
We
2,
have lines up numbers on this one.
yeah, page,
Okay,
I got what you are.
yeah.
all right.
Not voted in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
Note voted? Okay.
Also,
Okay.
page 4, that second paragraph, Councilor Murphy asked what the, should be rationale, should be an E on rational. Yeah.
You're always rational.
And on page 5, paragraph 2, last line, include the, it should be POU apostrophe S, point of use, not pouts.
Oh,
And it-
without the T.
Yeah. That's all I have on that one.
Anybody else? Did, Barbara, you had
Nope,
something?
nope,
Nope?
got same ones.
Okay. I wanted to ask on page 6 of 7, towards the top, under number 3, under motion carries, it said tabled for next meeting. Maybe I didn't read it carefully enough, but I wasn't sure whether that was talking about the following minutes, tabled from last
Oh, yeah.
meeting, or what? Did anybody understand what that was?
It was tabled from the prior meeting because we moved because it was so late from,
From last meeting?
Yeah.
Just before next meeting?
yeah, it's from, yeah, because that was February 10th, the meeting before, and we didn't get out of here until very late.
Mine got turned off. Thank you. Sorry about that. So we passed the minutes from, wow, it's up high now, February 24th, on a 7-0 vote. So we have minutes from March 9th.
Second.
Moved by Lon Wood, seconded by Barbara Healy. Any changes or corrections or additions? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the March 9th meeting minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. And then we have minutes from March 10th, the very next day. Town Council regular meeting minutes with a bold red important date to remember. This kind of jumps out at you when you're reading them. Anybody want to make a motion to accept the minutes of March 10th?
So moved.
Moved by Barbara Healy, seconded by Lon Woods. Any changes, corrections, additions, comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0 as well, which brings us to comments from the press. Next, comments from the public. Next, comments from the council. As everybody takes their glasses off. What? I saw all these hands going and they weren't raising their hands. Lon?
Yeah, I just want to encourage everybody to come out and vote April 12th.
Well, that's right, we're not meeting again before then, are we?
Yes, we are, well, not a public meeting.
Right.
We have a non-public.
We're meeting the 14th, which is after the vote.
Correct.
Right,
So we
okay.
have to, at some point, we have to
So-
decide who's covering where then.
Well, that's a good point.
Thank you.
We'll let Lon finish his comments.
Exactly. Because I didn't realize it either, you're right.
So come out and vote.
I
is
was
what you were saying.
encouraging everyone in the public, as well as counselors that are aware, to come out and vote April 12th. I'm running for re-election. I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Don't. Okay, which brought up another question as part of comments from the council. We need to have coverage at the polling places throughout the day. So either we can all go to the same places we were last time. I don't think anybody's restricted this time because nobody's on the ballot. Well, except you are an election official and you're on your official election ballot. If you were on the ballot to be, I don't know, dog walker or something like that, then you wouldn't be allowed to, or on the planning and building committee with the school district, you wouldn't be allowed to be at the polling places. But since you're on the ballot, but it's for your election official position that you already hold, then you can still be there as an election official. So that won't restrict you at all. So I guess I'm volunteering to continue to stay at St. John Newman, and it sounds like Lon Woods is too. Does anybody else have any thoughts or preferences on locations?
Usually have done the middle school, I'm fine with that too,
Okay.
unless someone else wants it.
No, I do
Jay Muse. Andy, are you available during the day too? Are you
I
taking
will
the
make
day off?
myself available that day.
Okay.
Yes.
Shall I send out a list?
I think we're all good.
Yeah, I'll send it out.
Send it?
Or
Great.
Paul
Yeah, I'm
can
taking
handle it.
notes.
Lynn always wants.
Paul-
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So Nancy?
Nancy, where would you want to work, or at J Muse? Okay, so we need coverage there anyway, because there's,
So big.
The
it's
three of
it's
you.
bigger, and the three of you can handle it. Maybe we'll move around as time allows. I'm not expecting a huge crowd, like a national election, but it'll keep us busy in any case. Okay? Does that handle that? Any other comments from the council? Finn?
Just real quick, another pillar of the Reed's Ferry Village community passed away, and that's Shirley Small, and I just wanted to let her family know that we're thinking about her, I'm thinking about her, and she was a 56-year resident, was very involved in the early years, and would be seen regularly up at Reed's Ferry Market doing scratch tickets. So she was a wonderful woman, and I offer my condolences to her family.
I'm sure she'll be missed. Anybody else? Nancy, Barbara? Great. Well, we're all looking forward to spring. A little warmer weather and a little less mud, and opportunity to see how things are going to grow and things like that. And hopefully we get past this pandemic. So with that, we come to the end of our meeting. Looking for a motion to
Adjourn?
adjourn. Very good. Motion by Lon Woods to adjourn, seconded by Barbara Healy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. Thank you very much. Good night, Merrimack.